Welcome to Formula One, your lap-by-lap breakdown of Formula One races. The big news heading into this race was the appendix of Carlos Sainz needing to be removed, meaning Ferrari reserve driver Ollie Bearman stepped in to fill his seat. Despite only having one practice session to get used to the car, he qualified an impressive 11th. At the front were the usual suspects of Verstappen and Leclerc for the sixth time on the bounce. Perez and Alonso lined up behind them, with the next two rows being taken up by the McLarens of Piastri and Norris, followed by the two Mercedes of Russell and Hamilton. Tsunoda scored a strong 9th place, followed by Lance Stroll. Bearman took 11th in front of Albon, Magnussen, Ricciardo and Hülkenberg. The Alpines improved a little, with Ocon and Gasly taking the 9th row ahead of Sargent, with Zhou propping up the rest of the grid after a heavy crash in free practice 3 gave him only one lap to set a time in qualifying. Before the race even kicked off, Gasly complained of a fault in his car and would become the first retirement of the 2024 season by the end of lap 1. Stroll got past Tsunoda, while the two Haas's went up a place each at the expense of Albon and Ricciardo. Ocon got ahead of Bottas, but at the front they set off as they'd lined up. On lap 4, Perez overtook Leclerc going into turn 1, but then the race was neutralised on lap 7 when Stroll glanced the wall at turn 22, broke his suspension and went straight into the wall, bringing out the first safety car of the season. Almost everyone pitted, with only Norris, Hamilton, Hülkenberg and Zhou staying out. This gave Norris a lead with Verstappen behind him, then Hamilton, then Perez, Leclerc, Piastri, Alonso, Russell, Hülkenberg and Zhou. Norris had a good restart while Bearman overtook Tsunoda and Ocon got past Albon. It was then that Albon had an altercation with Magnussen, the Dane not giving the tyre enough space and pushing him into the wall. Magnussen would receive a 10-second penalty for the aggressive move, which would go on to have a profound effect on the rest of the race. On lap 14, Verstappen passed Norris and Perez passed Hamilton. A lap later, Russell got past Hülkenberg while Bearman passed Zhou to get the last points-paying position. A lap later, Leclerc would pass Hamilton, which would start a battle where Piastri would get incredibly familiar with the back end of the Mercedes. The Australian had a couple of goes at passing the Brit, but never quite had the straight-line speed going down to turn 1. On lap 19, Bearman's inexperience showed as he passed Hülkenberg going into the last corner, but the wise Haas driver used DRS to get back past him into turn 1. A couple of laps later, Bearman would eventually get by. Lap 22 saw K-Mag drive down the inside of Tsunoda and complete a pass off the track, giving him yet another penalty and further cementing the fate of both drivers as the Grand Prix wore on. On lap 27, Leclerc got ahead of Norris to take 3rd place, but behind them, with Hülkenberg yet to pit, Magnussen became a true team player by starting to back up the drivers following. Yuki Tsunoda tried to move on the Dane but got out of shape navigating turn 2, and Ocon took advantage going into turn 3. Tsunoda would then fall victim to an incredible move by Albon into turn 1 on lap 33. While Verstappen was pumping in fastest laps up front, Hülkenberg finally came in for his mandatory stop on lap 34, managing to come out around 2 seconds ahead of his teammate and would ultimately capture 10th by the end of the race. On lap 37, Hamilton finally came in for his mandatory stop, Norris coming in to cover him a lap later. A relatively slow 4-second stationary saw him come out just ahead of the Mercedes driver, and they would engage in a battle for the rest of the race, Norris managing to eke out an advantage through the twisty bits, with Hamilton catching him on the straights, though ultimately to no avail. On lap 43, Albon got ahead of Ocon with a couple of mishaps ending the race. It was Zhou's turn to experience a slow Sauber pit stop this week after Bottas's misfortune in Bahrain, and Ricciardo had a wee spin all by himself at turn 1 on the penultimate lap before meekly carrying on. And so another victory for Verstappen, his 9th in a row, with Perez managing to find enough of a gap to Leclerc behind to mitigate his 5-second penalty. Piastri took a solid 4th place, with Alonso coming 5th and Russell just behind him for most of the race, taking 6th. Driver of the day with almost 50% of the public vote, Bearman, came in a very impressive 7th place given how little notice he had to get used to an F1 car for the whole Grand Prix. Norris and Hamilton behind didn't quite give themselves enough time to catch him. Hülkenberg, by virtue of his teammate pulling off a truly train, took the last points-paying position. I'll leave you with a replay of the race. In 2 weeks' time we go to Australia. Take care.